Joe, can you talk about your musical background and some of the pivotal moments and people that shaped who you are as an artist today?
Yeah, that's my musical background is weird because it's like I mean, music's a weird medium. Like I think in general, like because we all are just immersed in it, and so I think any musician really starts like right away. Like you start the second your parents put on a song for you, or whatever. You just hear it you're in a mall, like whatever, and there's music around. It's just such a universal thing that I really feel like my when I think about my musical background, I think a lot about the blues as a jump off point, the blues and soul. Because I pick up like Sunday morning, picture my mom vacuuming and dusting and stuff, and the smell of like pledge in the house, and my dad just like blasting like Al Green or Howlin' Wolf or stuff like that. And so that was like the backdrop of my like early musical experience, which looking back on, I'm really thankful for because that music is grounding in a lot of ways, and there's no way to fake it. It was like the most this is the most authentic like American musical genre, that like spectrum from blues to soul in a lot of ways. And so that's really where it all started for me. And then that clicked really hard with rap. Like rap was like my version of that. Like it was just when I started like really listening to that shit, probably when I was like 12, um, 11, 12, somewhere in that range. Like I really started to it was like Wu Tang and Nas and just that that early to mid '90s rap really sort of awakened me. I was a big Tupac fan back in the day. That one didn't stick around as hard as some of the other ones, but I was like a massive Tupac fan, and so that yeah, like that music felt like my music. Like that was the first music that where I was like, oh, this is like for us, for me. Like I'm now in it now. I'm not like a passenger in somebody else's world. And then so I started rapping just as a way to interact with that. I just love I still to this day just love it so much as a genre. It's like such a beautiful genre, and it's like I just wanted to participate in it. So and the nice thing about rap is that you can, in my school at least, and in a lot of people's schools, like there was always a group of people sitting somewhere in the lunchroom, somebody beating on the table, and then you could just jump in, and it was like an open thing. There was no, it was all just about how dope you were. If you, everyone was sitting in there like writing their little one-liners or whatever. Mine was like, you can't mess with me. I'm gonna clean my nuts and bolts of my mouth. Oh no, it was I'm a lyrical machine. I'm gonna clean my mouth with Listerine or something like that. I don't. It was some shit like that, but it just like that was the first time that I got like a reaction. Like I said it, and people were like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, "Oh." That was like the first like real social props I got was for rap. Like that was the first time where I was like kind of stood out and was kind of special among the group, you know. And I was like, I like this feeling. Let's keep doing this. And so yeah, really started digging into rap hard, and that was where I really, that's still to this day is the musical. That's the music that I've made that is I think the most like just true cultural my expression. Like that's the thing I would go to. And it's evolved a lot in my life. I'm almost 40 now, and so rap as a genre is just such a young person's like game that realistically I'm like now that's why I've gravitated to some of the other stuff. Even the way I do rap now is like more focused on electronic music and improvisation and free improvisation. I've taken my voice into different places and become influenced by different people. And so by different musicians, like by the way Kyle plays the horn, it's like I've learned, picked up from that and the other folks that I've known like that, watching them play their instruments and kind of get inspired. And so the music is sort of broadened out as I've gotten older. But the center point of it was just rap. It'll always be rap for me, really.
Even at that young age when you were starting rap, were you writing out everything ahead of time and sort of planning what you were going to say, or were you improvising and freestyling even at that age?
I mean, at first I was for sure doing the cardinal sin that everybody was doing, but nobody was talking about, which is like writing shit down and then pretending you came up with it in the moment. So at first, yeah, literally to me, freestyling didn't make any sense until I was like, really what it was in college. Like I went to college in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, like a small, like I got a full scholarship, like diversity scholarship to go there. And so like, and that was realistically my only actual, the only way I was gonna get to college is if somebody else paid for it. Like my family didn't have any money. That was the route I had. And even on the loans, it was one of those, we fell into the gap where it's like we made too much money, but not enough money. And so it was like, okay, I'm gonna go here or whatever. So I ended up going to a small town. Didn't know much about it. Had been there a couple times before that, and was kind of scared culturally of it because it was like really, it looked really nice, but also I had never been around that many white people at one time before. Really, like it was just Milwaukee's just not like that. Like, um, and so, but the one thing about it was that in Milwaukee, I was like a rapper. I could get my little shot in every now and then, but so many people were into it. But in Eau Claire, like not many people were into it. And so when I would start rapping, people would be like, "Oh my God, what did you just do?" And I was like, that's not that big of a deal. But it kind of weirdly enough encouraged me to freestyle because people would be like, dude, he's really dope. Like, watch him, he's about to do it right now. And then inevitably in a party, there would be like a moment where they'd be like, okay, now the freestyle is going to start or whatever. And then people started like having microphones in the basement. They knew I was going to go to that party. They would have like microphones. That was really how I like started like playing shows on some level. Like I hadn't at that point in my life, like early, I was probably 18, 19. I wasn't playing shows yet, really. Like I was like playing basements, or like sort of rapping up over beats to parties and basements. And so then the freestyling actually kind of emerged because I was like feeling good, the vibes were flowing, everybody, you know, everybody's drunk and just fucking like hanging out and swaying and shit. And so then I was like, oh, I can do the, or it was just easier. It was like I'd forget the words that I'd written and then I would just like say some other stuff or the beat would change and I had to react to the beat changing and stuff like that. So that was like the rudiments of sort of improvisation for me was like rapping at not frat parties, but the Eau Claire equivalent of frat parties. Which in a way, as I'm telling the story, I'm like, it seems surreal that this even is how that happened. But like realistically, it was actually a good way of doing it because it was like really organic. Like and it was like crowd oriented. It was like I would say something and people would respond or they wouldn't. And so I was like honing myself kind of in real time to a crowd of people that were trying to party, which is a really great way to learn how to be an MC. That's what it's supposed to be. That's at its core, that's what it is, you know. I mean, we don't have to go through the whole, like every rapper in the world, like just loves the opportunity to be like, rap started in Jamaica, okay? But like that sort of toasting shit, you know, like U-Roy, like that era, you know, even before like Cool Herc and all that shit, rap was about like keeping the party going and interacting with people and making them feel light and hyping them up. And so like that's in a weird way, it was kind of an organic way to start freestyling. And then I got connected with other MCs who were doing it at a serious level. And that was when it became like boot camp, where it was like, oh, these motherfuckers are serious. So like it became like, I gotta do my homework now. And I was rapping by myself. I would go, you know, it was the what is it? The, you know, the whatever the what's the Whiplash or whatever, the movie with the drummer where he's like practicing and shit. I'd be at home being like, I'm a lyrical miracle, like just trying to hit my flips and shit and hit my cadences and shit. But that was you know, that was later when I moved to the Twin Cities. That was when I really started getting serious about it as like an actual full on like art form craft or whatever. You know, it's probably 22 or whatever by that point. But up until that, it was pretty much all parties and shows and shit.
Um, how has psychedelics and meditation shaped your improvisational practice over the last decade or so?
I mean, it's almost entirely, I would say, really. I'd say more psychedelics than meditation. Or I'm more aware of the way that psychedelics has shaped it more than meditation. Because like meditation, so like I don't really sit much anymore, but I had a period of time that lasted probably about a decade, maybe a little more, where I was sitting like, religiously. Like you could actually use that word. I didn't consider myself a Buddhist. I wasn't chanting or practicing any specific form of meditation other than to like sit down and then that's it. And that's all you do. Which is all that's basically what it always is. But like, I, that for sure shaped me, I'm sure, and focused my mind in a lot of ways. But I have a more direct path for how meditation affects the other artworks that I'm engaged with and the other mediums that I'm engaged with and with music, and improvisation specifically. But psychedelics like broke me open on a deep level. Like psychedelics actually like enfranchised me into what was happening when people are improvising and why it's so ecstatic, or like actually what may not even why it's so ecstatic, but like what makes it good. And I would say ecstasy is what makes it good. Like when somebody is able to access ecstasy while improvising, it's good improvisation. I would actually supplant the word entirely. Instead of saying improvisation, I would say it's an ecstatic practice. And if I don't give a fuck how good somebody is at their instrument, it's cool if they're really good at their instrument. It's cool if they're really good at their instrument. But somebody who isn't, I'd take somebody who is lesser at the instrument, but more willing to access states of ecstasy over somebody who is less willing to access states of ecstasy, but better at their instrument. Ideally, they're good at their instrument and able to access this shit. But like, so I mean, I don't think anything on this planet, with the possible exception of sex, will teach you more about ecstasy than psychedelics will. And I think so it breaks you open. It's hard to me, the thing that gets in the way of improvisation is your character. Like you're like, no, I'm kind of, this is how I am. I don't want to look weird in front of people. I have a range of acceptable activity that I'm willing to do. And I think a really good improviser will push that and push what people think is an acceptable range of activity, but do it with such skill that people feel safe. Also, they feel like they're in the hands of ideally a master. Um, it's really hard to do that without getting broken open in some way. Like you kind of have to be willing to just drop the facade. The scene in a movie when somebody like they're reading a speech from the note cards and then they get super like frustrated and they're like, you know what, fuck it, and they throw the note cards and they start speaking from the heart. That is, to me, what improvisation fundamentally is. It's the moment where you go, I'm just going to do whatever is happening right now. I'm going to do that. And then if somebody is then like also had been broken open by one of the things that'll break you open in psychedelics again, hard to find something that can break you open like psychedelics can. The thing you're able to access is so much more imbued with that life force and that just essence of reality. So it did everything. It did everything to my life, to my practices, to my relationships, like everything. So yeah, it's hard to explain why. Though. I mean, it's funny because whenever I talk about psychedelics, I'm sort of always aware in the back of my mind that everyone who's done psychedelics knows exactly what I'm talking about. If they've done in a setting, in a whatever set and setting, and if the dose was high enough and shit like that. And then everyone who hasn't done psychedelics like has no idea what I'm talking about because it's fundamentally just like it's the strangest possible experience that a human being can have. It just doesn't seem possible until you're having it. And even now that I'm not on psychedelics right now, and it's hard for me to remember how weird it is once you're actually on it. It's like through a fog or something like that. But then when you access those states of ecstasy, a part of that comes back, and the channel that you've worn between yourself and that just ephemeral world of the imagination that's more real than we allow ourselves to believe, it comes back. And the path that you've trekked up the mountain and back down enough times that when you need to, you can kind of go up into the foothills. And I think that somebody who can do that is just going to be a good improviser. There's just no way around that. No matter what they do.
How would you describe that from a like sonic standpoint? I mean, not that you like after doing psychedelics a few times sounded different, but like if there are some maybe more technical aspects that changed? I mean, can you describe that rather than just like the how you felt? Did what changed about your actual playing or
Well, that's
rapping or
what's
whatever?
weird. It's like, that's a great question because it does. You can tell when people like. I became fascinated with artists like watching their before and after, not just before and after psychedelics, but their moment where they like get it, and it's the most fascinating thing in the world to me because it happens all the time, and you'll just be like, oh shit, this is different. I feel like the dirty secret of a lot of this shit, is that the sonic qualities are less important than the ecstasy of the choice of the sonic qualities. And so then what happens is that for me, what happened is that my sonic range expanded a lot because I was like, this doesn't strictly matter that I go up and I'm like, hey, yo, I'm rapping and I'm super hard. Yeah, if you mess with me, then you're gonna get scarred. Yeah, like rap, baby. Like it became less about like hitting my cadences and listening for the 2 and the 4 and all these things that are like I had internalized them so deeply that they weren't conscious anymore. But what it was then I could play with. All of a sudden, I'm playing with these like jazz folks, right? They're playing a rhythm, like many rhythms at once, none of which have anything to do with any rap rhythm. And the Sonics are, playing with like Mike Lewis on saxophone, who's like screaming through a saxophone, and Jeremy Iwasaker on guitar, who's just like doing who the fuck knows what. And all these drummers just putting me through my paces because rap, like you're kind of a part of the rhythm section in a way. But then what happens is that if it's that free jazz thing where if you break open and the whole thing becomes ecstatic, everything slows down and you start to be able to float in between the rhythms and play with them. You can pick them up and like pull them apart and just rub your face into that one. Oh, that feels so good. And then you drop that one and you're like, fuck, it doesn't matter anymore. And so I would say people probably saw me, if they looked at my change, they probably saw me become way more free, way more rhythmically dexterous, way more like tonally dexterous. Like my voice didn't sit in one register anymore. Just the whole thing just opened up to choice because I realized it didn't matter. I could do whatever. And so then it became my fetishes. I was like, I like this thing. I like how this feels right now. I want to scream into this microphone at the top of my lungs right now. But I would look back when I did that, I'd look back and there'd be this like logic to it that I was not aware of at the time. But I'll be like, damn, when you did that and when I did that, it came together. Because here's the thing about improvisation, like the improvisation that I do, I'm never by myself. So a lot of it is about the exchange between the musicians. It has to be in exchange. It's conversational. And so the thing that really changed was that my ability to um, listen to what people were doing and then feel how I felt about it and then use that to like shape what I was doing became the forefront. That became the actual thing that was happening. The phenomenon was more interactive and more like people watching me pick up these like sonic objects and be like, I like this one. This one's really cool. I don't like that sound. Like all this shit, just all of it just happening. And so it's like sonically, yeah, there's a bunch of different shit happened. The thing I said, like looser, more free, um, more whatever, but also lingually too, because psychedelics and language are so deeply intertwined that it became like very easy. I don't have any problem calling up language when I'm improvising. I never really did, but right now it feels like you know, it's just easier to call it up and it's more dexterous and more alive. Like the words, the way they string together feel more imbued with this life. It's hard to tell what the quality of that is, but it's easy to recognize. Like people can tell it.
At what point do you think that you started to, well, I don't know, let me rephrase this. At any point did you feel like you abandoned language in your improvisational practice and just moved into pure sound or sonic territory?
Oh
And
yeah.
when did that happen?
Yeah, it's weird that you say that because that did actually happen like a deep period, actually to the point where I remember I did some like show one time with like these folks like a bass clarinetist and a electronic like artist. and we done these things that were semi-improvisational, and an audience member like raised her hand after the performance, and she's like, I've seen you play a lot, and she's like, she's like, it's cool that you're exploring your voice like an instrument now, but I miss the words. She was like, that was like, I was really attracted to that. And she's like, and it's not, they're not really there anymore. And I hadn't even really, weird, dude, this is gonna sound weird, but I had not even noticed that had happened really. Like, I was just like, I'm just doing shit. Like, and so there was like a couple of year period where words felt like artificial to me for some reason. Like they felt, and they're not objectively, they just felt like that to me at that time. Like they just felt wrong, like they felt dirty or something like that. And so like I think what was probably happening with like when that happened, that was probably like, I'd say about 6-7 years ago or something like that. Like um I would say what was really happening was that I was pushing my voice in new ways. I was taking voice lessons and doing other things where I was like trying to find um I was fucking with like operatic techniques, and just I was curious. I just wanted to see what my voice could do and how I could push it. And so I was more interested in that, sort of picking things up and putting them down as you see fit. I was picking up sounds sooner than I was picking up words, and I felt more challenged by it. And so it was holding my attention a lot better. And I was playing with instrumentalists who were also bending their instruments in interesting ways. And so I was like, can I do that? Like, can I do like multiphonics out of no? But okay, but I'm gonna try. I tried though. Like it's like, what ways can I bend this shit? And really, what it did for me was expand my range. Because if you listen to my recorded shit, it's all in one range, basically. Like, but now it's not. Like it's really not. Like the last album has a little bit more like tonal quality to it, but like the improvised stuff, which often isn't recorded, unfortunately, because that's some of my favorite music that I've ever made in my life, is some of the improvised shit. But like if you listen to some of those later, I did a thing at the Southern that had a bunch of different people there, like Anthony Cox, Dave King, Josh Clausen, Devon Gray, Monquay Nadosi, bunch of cats, hitters, everybody. Uh, all improvised. It was just all over the place, like high, low, pulled, stretched, like super staccato, tight, and hit hard, and screams and everything. And so I was just like looking for all the textures and the flavor. I was like, where are they all at? How do they feel to me? And yeah, it was an interesting period. Like, but I've been walking back toward language a lot lately, because I'm like, I wanted to do something different than it was doing before. Like I'm using language like way more like I want to condense words down into like dense objects. I want to say one word and have it mean what I used to do in 20. And so that's been an interesting challenge, and it's holding my attention now. It's beating me up. It's holding my attention. It's kicking my ass is what it's doing. But it's the most interesting musical challenge I have in front of me. It's the hardest thing to do, is try to figure out how to do that. So it's kind of the one that I didn't get obsessive over.
On the Strange Famous Records webpage, where your No Birds Sing bio is published, you're quoted as saying, quote, "That's what creativity is. It's coming to this point where you don't know exactly what you're doing and having to figure out what to do. The second you're not doing that, you're just rehashing old shit." End quote. What's your approach to keeping your material fresh? And do you have a daily artistic or creative practice at the moment, or have you had one in the past?
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. I could tell how old I was when I said that. But I mean, that is true. That doesn't sound, because that's sort of almost. It's more just that it's an obvious, like it's an obvious thing, and I probably said it with a lot more profundity behind my voice. I was like, "Here's the thing, guys," but yeah. So to keep it fresh, because it is like the thing. This is where everything's about psychedelics to me on some level. So tying it back to that for a second, the reason psychedelics are so important, I think, is because they enfranchise you deeply into the moment. They're like, this is happening right now. It is happening. Like, don't look away. It is happening. And it's like, we all have this dare that we're doing with ourselves to see how much of our existence can we actually enfranchise ourselves into. It's not total. We all have a point where we will hit, or I've never met the person, and frankly do not want to, that doesn't have that point, because I don't even know what they would. That's insane to me. But I know when I hit my point, I'm terrified. And so I feel like what's happening with the arts on some fundamental level, and I take this seriously in my role as an artist, is that I got to be 2 pages ahead of the textbook from the general population. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to be the smartest person on the planet. I don't need to be the coolest person. I don't need to be anything. I need to be of use to people. And I feel like the way I am of use to people is by having that threshold of what I'm willing to tolerate be farther in to the moment than not. Then they might be at that minute, even if it's just that little bit ahead. Not to be better than them at all, but to be of use to them. And so this idea of like creativity being this jump off point, I would say now what it is it's not only a jump off point into like the, your own personal, it's not about my personal creative journey anymore in the strictest sense. Like, it's about like the journey, like our collective journey as a group of souls on this planet, whatever we want to call whatever's happening. I have no idea what's happening, for the record, no one does. But like, I want to accept it a little bit more, and then turn around and show it back to people in a way that's filtered like through me. And there's millions of other people around the planet that are doing that, and it's so beautiful to me, because this is to me the beautiful legacy of the arts. It's like, this is why arts are so important. It's because they're doing that on a fundamental level. They're pushing the boundaries of what people can accept. They're pushing the boundaries of how deeply people will enfranchise themselves into the moments. They're creating opportunities for ecstasy. They're fun. They're light. They just soothe you when you need a break from the edge. All that shit is great. And so my practice in order to do that is to push myself there through whatever means I can, and then to kind of just report back, like just to report back. And so they become, for me, the work ends up becoming like, I really don't want to use the term religious, because it just doesn't translate to people the way I would like it to, but in a way it becomes very reverent of the divine nature of reality itself. And there is an infinite creative fountainhead inside of all of us. It's always happening. We close our eyes, there's just endless images or sounds, or even if people don't see things in their heads, they're hearing things, they're thinking thoughts, they're thinking sentences, they're whatever. It's just, that shit's fascinating to me. Like, it's infinite. It just keeps going, and it'll never stop. And so pushing yourself into that shit is the daily practice to me, like sort of sinking into that thing deeper, allowing yourself to kind of flow. I'll often do this thing. I used to do it a lot when I was meditating more regularly, but now I do it like if I'm falling asleep or something. I'll do this where I'll just picture myself sinking into this like black ocean. And then I'll get scared and I'll start swimming. I'll be like, no, chill. Just chill out. It's okay. And I'll be like, there's something in the water with me. It's like, yeah, there is. Just keep sinking though. And inevitably there comes a point where that metaphor stops being a metaphor. And I'm actually like, fuck, this is what's happening here. There's a type of sinking taking place here. My soul is sinking or rising or floating or whatever. It's like that point in the ocean where you don't know whether you're going up or down or whatever. And so, like, to me, that thing, like practicing that thing at this point, because I've been rapping for fucking so long. I've been writing for my whole life. It's always torture. I hate it. I can't stop doing it. All this is so hard, and it's just torture. But so that shit's just kind of on autopilot at this point. It's going to happen. I know how to build a thing now. I know how to build a thing. But the question is, like, now that you know how to build a thing, like, what does the world need you to build? Like, what do your fellow humans need you to build? And I feel like we all got to take that question like very seriously. We shy away from it because we're like, no, I don't want to be too like grandiose or whatever. But did the person who made it'd be funny if we like have these like grand cathedrals and these beautiful monuments to human ingenuity, and if those people were like, I don't want to be too forward, I don't know if I want to like do that. It's like, no, build the cathedral. Like we need cathedral, like make the song, like do the thing. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm at in my practice. Like I feel confident as a builder. I know how to do that. I feel confident in my instrument. I know how to do that. And now it's just a question of like, can I really confront the nature of reality as it truly is, and then filter it back to people in a way they will relate to? And how deeply can I do that? How deeply am I willing to push myself to do that?
Do you have a philosophy around improvisation?
I mean, I'd say that it's really the ecstasy thing is my philosophy around that, to treat it, because we've always had techniques of ecstasy, like always. And ecstasy is like a magic trick in a weird way. There's this story that I really like about um it's in this book by Mersha Eliade. It's this called the book is called, I can't remember if this is in The Forge and the Crucible or if it's in Shamanism Techniques of Ecstasy, but it's in one of them. And anyway, this they're talking to this shaman, or recounting an interview from the shaman, and he was like, well, yeah, what I do is I get a bone, a boar bone or whatever, and I go into the woods and I bury it. And then the next day people come to me, and I drink ayahuasca, and I go into this state, and I'm like, with them, and I'm trying to heal them and all this shit. And at some point I get this like divine revelation that there's a bone somewhere nearby that was their afflicted bone. But I've taken it out of their body, and now it's like somewhere nearby. And so, they snake through the woods, and the shaman's like, I think it's over here. Nope, I think it's over here. Whatever. And then the shaman like digs up the bone that they buried the night before and goes, here's your bone that was hurting you. Here's the thing that was making you sick. I've taken it out of your body. And then they get better. And that was the whole thing. And you could tell that the tone of the writing was like, look at this. This is a little bit of a sham. That this isn't like, look, this is all their stories are just bullshit or whatever. Like, and Mersha Eliade was dope, but he had some weird biases against the sort of magical aspects of shamanism and shit like that. But whatever, story for another day. But the way I read that is that you can trick people for their own benefit. And that's what I feel like art is. Like art's like a magic trick. You're doing magic. Like craft is just a way of, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you approach the page, or that you approach the whatever, like whatever however you're composing or however you're making it. It's like it's too much energy to have to reinvent the wheel every time. So you use craft to be like, this is what's worked on people before. This is the magic trick that's worked and operated them before. And so with improvisation, it's like, I'm down to use these magic tricks and these rhyming patterns and these, other like, drum. I used to study drum rudiments with my mouth and see if I could hit them all and shit like that. All those things are cool. They trick people, they tantalize them. But what you're ultimately doing is making them kind of believe in magic for a second. Like they're like, but the thing is that reality like actually is magical. Like that dude, the shaman, is describing like the placebo effect. So it's magic to me that if somebody's convinced they're better, that they're probably gonna get better. Like that's some crazy shit. That just makes no sense. The world shouldn't necessarily be like that. It is magic. Like we do need to tap into it. And so the magic trick that artists pull in their various mediums, movie magic or music magic or whatever, all the writing magic, all these the tricks that we pull are to get people to actually recognize the beauty and the deep like magical beauty of reality, not just the like, oh, it's beautiful, but it is magic. It's magic. The whole thing is fucking magic from start to finish. Just because we named it doesn't mean it's not magic. I forgot what the question was but that is my philosophy around improvisation. Yeah, that is what it is. It's a magic trick. It's a magic trick. So do the magic trick faithfully. Like go find the bone faithfully, do the pageantry faithfully, and then But the ultimately know and trust that the real actual trick is in the audience. Like they're bringing the divinity to the party. It's not really about you. It's about them, and you're there to perform a function. And if you can do that to them, that's a real gift that you can give to them. But it's about them. In the same spirit that you give a gift to somebody, you should give music to them. Like you give it to them for them to be happy. You give it to them freely. You say, here, like I want you to enjoy this. That's how it should be given, I think, to people.
Uh, what was your process for creating and composing A Hill in Natchez?
Yeah, I mean that was a weird one. That was a weird one. That in a Now weird in a bad way. It's hard for me to talk about the process without talking about the life shit that was going on too, because it was like all intertwined and really actually became one process. Like, so the that was the first time I composed music, and I composed it with my friend Devon Gray, and then another friend of mine, Josh Clausen, and there was also a lot of improvisation in it. We like wrote improvisation into it, and it the whole thing started when so my family on my dad's side is from Mississippi, Gloucester, Mississippi, Centerville, Mississippi, this, cluster of small towns near the Louisiana border. I'm really deeply connected to those people, my family down there. Like I have a deep connection to them, but Mississippi as a whole is really foreign to me. Like I talk like this, I wear cardigans. That shit does not happen in Mississippi. It's a very different vibe. They love me, I love them, but we're kind of looking at each other from across a gulf, even though there's a tremendous amount of love in that. And truly some of the best people I've ever met in my life, some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, some of those, like, I love those folks. I love my family and feel very lucky to have family from down south. Anyway, uh, went down there for a visit, went to go visit Natchez. So my dad was doing a lot of research into our family history and was particularly interested in the point that we got here through slave trade in some way, shape, or form. He assumed that our people were probably brought from this trading post, which at the time was the second biggest trading post in the United States, a very important trading post, if you can call it that, for slaves. It was like a big economic driver. It essentially was this open air market for people. So we go there. I'm stealing myself for this experience. I'm assuming that I don't know what I was assuming, that we were going to see like a museum or something, or there was going to be a shit. And we get there, and it literally was just this hill, this grassy hill near the Mississippi River, and that was it. And there's like a couple panels that are like, have illustrations of people walking by next to chain slaves. And I was walking around the hill trying to wrap my mind around what was happening. Like it's so hard to describe the switch in me at that moment between the abstraction of slavery that had been in my mind for a long time and the story. And I was like, yes, I've seen Roots. It's bad. There was people, they were split up. It was bad. Like da da da. I had this narrative in my head, and I knew all the points, and I had gotten really into history, and I was like, this is what the white devil did, all this shit. Like I was all that shit. I had all the bona fides. I could flash them whenever I needed to. But then when I was there, I was humbled by the emptiness of that place. I was just brought, every thought that I had ever thought about slavery before that seemed absolutely idiotic. Like I was like, you arrogant asshole, how in the hell did you think you could ever even come close to understanding this experience that these people actually went through? And it just, again, I would call it a psychedelic moment, just a breaking open. Like it was transformative. As I was leaving, we were walking out, and I looked down, and there's a slab of concrete with chains in it, and it punched me in the chest, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And without saying, I don't even know if there's a sign or anything, but I think there is, because I came to find out so much way that those were there since then, and it just ruined me. When I got home back to Minnesota, it took weeks for me to wrap my head at all around what had happened, or even just, it was just processing and churning in me. Because I had never been that close to the reality of it before, ever. And I realized something super significant that shaped my art since then. And I am thankful for this lesson, even though I feel bad saying that, because it's like what fucking gruesome like seeds there are for that lesson. But I'm thankful for it nonetheless, because the thing I learned was that it was actually the emptiness that did it. It was the fact that I was setting aside my previous abstractions and assumptions and thoughts about slavery, and just left an open space for the actuality of it to come through. Um, I don't necessarily believe in like ancestral intervention, but I flirt with it with this experience, because it just felt, it really did feel like somebody, like an elder, coming to me and saying, "No, young boy, you know nothing here." And when everything was removed, my empathy started to flow, and I started to understand in a way that I felt like was more useful than the understanding that I had had before that, which was a factual understanding. So when I went about making anything for the piece, the visuals, choreographing the dances, making the music, I was just listening to myself. Like, I would sit in my attic with the lights off, and I would just sit there and listen and wait. And then something would come. That's inevitably. Like, after it was, this was months of mostly just sitting there being like, "It's not going to come this time. Is it? No, shut up. Nope, you're talking. You got to be quiet. Otherwise it won't come. Is it going to come now? It might have just come, but then you said something and maybe it was going to come then." Months of that, months of it. And then inevitably something will come, a feeling, a tone, a sensation. And I was like, this is it. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go in here. And I had no intention of even writing any of the music, but I was talking to Devon, and I was like, "Okay, man, it's like this, it's like that, it's like that." And then one time he just pushed the piano in front of me, and he was like, "You'll say it easier with this." And so I was like, "Well, okay." And so I started working shit out. He would write shit down. We would sort of have some conversation about it, and shit evolved from there. But that process was really just a process of listening more than anything else. Like, it really does feel like that piece kind of like came together through many different hands, like not just mine. I'm talking literal hands now, not ancestral hands, but like, uh, you know, 30 some people touched that piece. Some of those like deeply, like my guy Kai Benson, deep collaborator on that piece. Devon and Josh, deep collaborators. The dancers, like Darius Strong, deep collaborator. So people were bringing like deep soul to it. But if it really did, it like there's just no other way to say it. Like, it really did kind of just come through. Like, it was not. And then whenever people say that, I roll my eyes a little bit, and but that's the reality of the situation. Is it just kind of came through.
Would you say that that is typical of your composition process as you've moved into that world, or do you have a different compositional process usually?
No, I mean, if I'm thinking about myself as a composer, it's as a writer, because the way I write reminds me of how my composer friends talk about composing. I don't think about composing that way, because I don't actually compose when I'm making instrumental music. So I started Like that was the first one, but then pretty much since then, I've always been working on a piece of music, always since then. Like that was not intentional. It was like mostly from people asking me to do it, and then reluctantly at first I was like, okay, fine, and then I was like, I don't know, I kind of like this, and I was like, I'm not gonna do this again, and then I was like, okay, I guess if you ask me. But what I realized is that my compositional process instrumentally, the reason I don't think about it as composition in the strictest sense is because it's hinges on the improvisation of other people. I think about it more like producing a musician than composing, but you know, whatever, potato, like it's all just making music. But when I'm composing on the page, like writing, it is a tortured process. I hate writing. I hate it, like deeply. It hurt. I wish I was joking about that. Like I really do. I wish I was being cute. Like I wish I was like, oh, I hate writing. Like, but I literally, it hurts so much. And it's so tortured, and I'm such a masochist for it. And it just, I don't understand. I do not understand why I still do it. I don't get it. But with composing music, it's a spiritual thing. I keep it light. Like for instance, so I'm working with these a violinist and a violist and play duo from New York, Maya Bernardo and Hannah Levinson. We're working on a piece right now. So they flew out. We're in the studio working on shit, and they played this beautiful, just like so it's all improvisational, and we're working, and we're still hold up, stop, think about it like this, okay, right? It's more like this, like so we're back and forth, like really doing this deep improvisational process, and then I can't even remember what the prompt was. I was like, you know what, just play something, like play something beautiful or something. I can't remember what I said. It wasn't a direction really much, but they started playing, and right away, the second they started playing, I was like, oh shit. And I sat down and I just was like, and like tears started welling up in my eyes, and it was so beautiful. They're beautiful players always, like they're the best. But this was they touched something, and they played for 12 minutes, and I was like, we're done for the day. And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, we're done. Like, we can't be greedy here. We were given something. We need to walk away now. Like, that's it. So I'm superstitious about it. I am. And if it does nothing else, I'll tell you this. I like being superstitious about this shit because I really am actually. Like, I really do feel like you are in debt to the spirit when you're fucking with these things. Like I think people are way too casual about music. They're way too casual about it. Like it's not there's some serious shit out here. Not to say that it shouldn't be fun and light, because music should be casual. A lot of like I defend pop music super hard because I have a lot of friends that are like, pop music is dumb pop music, and I'm like, don't you fucking dare. Katy Perry's kind of dope, okay, but pop music is important, like fun music is important. I don't mean to say that. What I mean to say is that you can access ecstatic states that require the aid of a spiritual axis. And so if you are fucking with that, you gotta come with a certain humble humility and a certain attitude. Now, in a practical level, the superstition makes other people feel like it's important. So like if nothing else, like Maya and Hannah were like, oh shit, we just did something important here. We just did something special. It puts a box around it where it's like, no, this was a thing. And they did. We had been working together for hours and hours that day. And that piece moved me to tears. So in that sense, I'm the patient and they're the shamans burying the bone. And it worked. The magic trick worked. So back up. It worked. You did it. Walk away. So like that's easier and more fun to do that. because it's reliant on somebody else's. Creativity is not hard. Art's not art's not that hard on a conceptual level. Like it's pretty easy to be like, oh, here's this concept, let's develop it. But if you're the person that is solely like when I'm like, oh, here's this concept, let's develop it on the page, it's like I'll go as deep and as hard and I'll just scrape myself to the bone, like and I don't know when to stop. And I'm like a dog like chewing its arm who just doesn't know when to stop. But then when I'm working with other people and I'm like watching them, it's like coaching a football game versus like playing in one. And you can kind of be like, no, you need rest. Like we got to save you up for the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of push and pull them and do all that shit. And that's fun for me. I really enjoy doing that. And I get to work with just amazing players. Like, so it's, I mean, it's kind of beautiful. I really enjoy it. So it's more fun than composing on the pages.
It kind of makes sense. It's like a big feedback loop. But if you're kind of starting with the players in that way, then you have a better sense that what you do end up composing is something that came from them already. So like it's going to be more successful in terms of the magic you're trying to create.
Absolutely. Because it's really easy for me to tell when they're being magical or not. Because I'm like, oh shit, that felt like magic to me. It's probably magic then. But in myself, I'm like, nothing is magic. The words are dead. You don't know what you're saying. Like it's just, and then finally, just through sheer torture, I'll be like, I guess this is okay or whatever. And other people are like, it's magic. And I'm like, I'm dead to it. I can't feel it. But I know I get it when they're doing it. I understand what it's like to stand on stage, say your words and have them move people like that. And luckily, rap, as much as rap is about language, it's not really about the language, it's about the whole thing. Like the language is like a color for the track and the beat and the whole thing. But like, yeah, absolutely. It's harder. And it's insecurity, it's like whatever, all the rest of the shit all wrapped into one. But for when I'm working with other people, I just trust my ear. I know what I like. That part, I have no insecurity about that. I know what I like. This is gonna sound like whatever. I don't know how it's gonna sound. I always like get weird when sex shit when I bring up sex shit because I'm like, I don't know how prudish anyone is, but like it's a little bit like while you're having sex, like you know what you like. If you know what you're like and you're down to like listen to the other person and be like, oh, they like that because they're reacting to the shit. And so I know they like that. And I'm like, I like that because I feel it and I like it actively. Working with other musicians doing improvised shit is closer to that. That same thing is true of improvising with musicians like on stage when I'm like improvising vocally. It's like a lot. It's not tortured. I don't feel like it's a tortured process. I feel like it's ecstatic and effervescent. But composing on the page is just, it's a necessary evil, but it fucking sucks.
So what happens if you are working with performers and you're commissioned by a specific group or specific soloist, but they are not comfortable improvising? Do you just have them play other music that they've already learned, or you only work with people who are willing to improvise?
I mean, at this point in time, I would never work with somebody who's not willing to. Like at this point in time, I'm 100% just doing this process because it's the only one. Frankly, it's the only one I have time for. It's a practical thing because I'm just like, I don't have a ton of time, so send me some shit, and I'm gonna figure out how this all fit. Like, basically what I'm looking for when I'm working with people is I'm like, what do I like? What do they like? Where do they overlap? What type of territory can we explore? And then now looking within that territory, like what am I finding that I'm particularly interested in, or what could be a fun thing to do in that particular moment? But if people weren't giving me something back, I'd be like, we should just not have this conversation. I'm not the person for you. In the past, what I did, this could be cool, but I just don't want to, it's not the medium that I want to really devote myself to. But what I did in the past was sample shit. And so like, yeah, I've been commissioned by ensembles and other groups before. And so I would like, and I always do this on some level when I'm working on something, I'll take samples from other, like another thing. So if I'm working on like this Maya and Hannah like Amplay thing, I might be like pulling from Xenakis or some shit just in sampling and twisting and pitch shifting and chopping and just to get some like flow going. But that I would do that to fruition with the other groups, and there's one song in particular that I actually really like that I made that way. That was like the Ableton session is insane. There's so many samples and crossfades. It took forever to build, but I like it. I listen to it. I'm like, damn, it's a little bit of a funky classical kind of new music classical thing. So there's a ton of weird harmonies in it and a ton of like strange movements and shit. But then there's this like marimba and toms on the bottom that are just kind of bouncing the whole time with the same rhythm. And it's sort of like, you know, if what's his name, like Lamont Young was black or whatever, which with a name like Lamont, you would think, like I have a cousin named Lamont who's very black. Anyway, if that's how I would, you know, that shit is cool, and if it could have been developed into something deeper, like if I would go down that rabbit hole. But you know, everyone's presented with like a bunch of rabbit holes that they could go down at any given time, and you kind of got to pick the ones that are available to you. And so right now, instrumentally, the only thing I'm interested in really is working with people who are going to be not only improvisers but fucking improvise, like good improvisers. Like I gotta be excited by them. Otherwise, it's just there's no reason to really even have the conversation at that. I wouldn't give them anything they would like anyway. They'd be disappointed. I'd be disappointed. It's like we shouldn't even really do it.
When you were teaching hip hop and leading the improv ensemble at McNally Smith, did you have a process that you would use to impart these ideas and these experiences onto students, or?
Teaching is fun, but I did not do it formally at all. Like I would like quote unquote write a syllabus quote unquote. And McNally was like feral ground anyway. Like it was not like it was like a school, but it was, you know, everybody was kind of pretending, so you could play the edge and it was fine. Like nobody was gonna say anything to me about anything. And so I took advantage of that to do something that I think is very good. I think the idea of music education for not like if you're gonna go into like classical music and all that shit, I know a bunch of super dope musicians, composers in the whatever what is even the term for the classical music, because it's classical seems so like a bad word to call what's happening right now with music. Is new music like the term?
Yeah, basically.
Sure. All right, new music for today. New music. If you get a better one, let me know, because I'll whatever y'all use, I'll use that one. But like, I know so many dope people in the new music world who are very heavily schooled, but it's the only artistic genre that I can think of right now that where people seem to really need school to be dope. Like it seems like it'd be really difficult. And I'm an observer here, so this is a, you know, whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't actually know this, but that's what it seems like as an observer, is that it would be really hard to be really dope without going to school. Everything else, school is kind of like not that good of an idea. And so I always thought it was weird. Like I was like teaching people who were like, and they were like, what did you do? And I was like, I didn't go to school. I like got drunk and rapped at parties a lot. And then I fucking like took psychedelics, and then I like traveled. I went to Europe, I went to Puerto Rico, like that. I like just, it's about experience. It's about life for a lot of these other things. And then the actual musical forms themselves are simpler. So what they rely on instead is authenticity of soul. Like so that's why back to the blue full circle here, back to the blues and soul shit. Blues is like such a simple genre. Like we could, you know, it's just, yeah, that's blues. It's easy. Except for like, tell me who else but Howlin' Wolf could sing a Howlin' Wolf song on this planet. Like I'm sure somebody did some cool covers or whatever, but what's dope about Howlin' Wolf is Howlin' Wolf. That's what's dope about that brother. He's just is that person, and that person is so interesting and ecstatic and soulful and just letting it all out. That is what's, to me, what's dope about what one might call like the pop genres or whatever the fuck, the other non-classical genres or whatever the hell people want to call that. So when I was working with students at McNally, I basically was just hanging out with them, and I would push them. I push everybody. I want to be pushed, and I want to push people. That to me is kind of a fundamental. Like if somebody says something around me that I don't think is a very good idea or a very developed idea, I'll push on it. And I want people to do that to me too. If I say some shit that doesn't like actually isn't actually like feel real to somebody else, I want them to be like, poke. And then for me to have to go like, oh shit, I don't like when you poke that. But then later I'm like, thank you for poking that. I appreciate that. I'm a better person for it. And so that's what I would do with them. I would just, whenever they would say some shit, I'd go, poke. And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, defend yourself. Like, that's a dumb idea. Defend yourself. And until they can't. And finally, they would always have the same breakthrough. It would be like, I just want to write songs about sex, okay? Well, then you probably should do that. That's what you should be writing songs about. Like, I just want to write about my family, okay? Do that. Do that. That's not what you were doing. You were doing some dumb shit. Now you're down to where you're actually trying to be. Because I don't really care where they wanted to go. I didn't want to impart on other teachers were teaching good shit, but one thing that I saw happening a lot is that they were like trying to shape them and mold them and shit like that. And I was like, I don't know what shape you want to become. Like, I don't want to tell you that. I don't know what you should be writing about. There's no rubric for this. Like, write about what you need to write about. And so it's hard for people to get down to that level where they're actually dealing with their own desires. And so that was my strategy in a nutshell, was just to get them to figure out what the fuck they wanted to talk about. And then I would, with the advanced, because I had some students for like 3 or 4 years. So then once they got to that breakthrough, I'd be like, okay, well, are you in the right genre for that? Like, you want to write these love songs, but you're singing, you're doing this genre, does that work? And they'd be like, I don't know, does it? Usually their genre was like generic, like singer-songwriter shit or whatever. So I'd be like, and then I'd be like exposing them to music the whole time. So every time we'd have a conversation, I'd be like, go listen to Howlin' Wolf and come back. And they'd be like, oh my God. And I'd be like, yeah, it is like that. It's that crazy. Shit gets wild. Anyway, here, listen to this person, like listen to Nina Simone, like listen to fucking like whatever, Janis Joplin, whatever. Like I started just be feeding them music. And then they would just develop. So like music, like the more they listened to, the better they were. The more honest they were with themselves, the better they were. And so I was doing those two things, feeding them music and trying to break them open a little bit.
Cool.
Maybe we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, it was fun.